want to take a moment to welcome you into this space, a space for honesty, a little bit of reflection, and healing conversation. And this isn't really like a panel. I think it's an important pause, especially because it's Minority Mental Health Month, and really it doesn't even matter when it is. I think with so much going on in the world, it's just so important for us to be able to be in spaces that will pour back into us and give us a little bit more to help us with all the things that we are carrying. Many of us are dealing with things like burnout. We are the strong ones. We're doing all the things. We're overthinkers. We're fixers. We have to show up for everyone else at work, at home, in our communities, but we rarely have the space to unpack our own stuff. And the reality is you can't take all that stuff with you everywhere. You can't keep stuffing it down and expect peace to bloom from that pressure. So today we're cracking open that conversation. I think it's about helping you see the possibilities of what healing looks like. And I've invited some of my really dope friends to come have this conversation with us. I couldn't think of better people to have it with other than the brilliant therapists happening with me today. And it's cool because they're not just therapists. They do lots of other things too. And they just bring a different lens, but all of them from this place of heart and concern for the well-being of others and expertise and really just like a deep care for the community. So welcome with me today, Ms. Sharon Rando and Ms. Alicia Cruz.
Hi.
Hi.
So I'm going to kick it over to Alicia. If you can just give us a little blurb about who you are and what you do.
Gladly. So I'm Alicia Cruz. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist based out of Connecticut. I am your betrayal trauma therapist, and I focus my work with helping women thrive after toxic and abusive relationships.
Hey, I love that. Ms. Sharon, what about you?
Hi, I am Sharon Randall, and I am a licensed psychotherapist, and I help lead women back to their soul, to honor all parts of themselves, and to release the pressure of showing up and step into their purpose and power.
I love that. So coming back to us, I think that's like a huge concept, and we don't always realize how much we need it. And sometimes we need some support to come back to us. Like we've been so busy showing up for everyone else. So one of the first questions I'll throw out there, and this is how we're going to do it. We're just going to cover a couple questions that some of you guys may have when it comes to therapy, healing, navigating that space, because I think sometimes we don't realize that when we have the answers and then two, the answers are out there. So when it comes to something like therapy and from the experiences that you guys have, what brings someone into therapy, especially if they appear fine?
Well, I know many of the clients that I've been seeing, especially lately, I think everybody has their coping skills that they are really solid with, and they have been able to maintain life with those skills for a long time. But um, life has gotten crazy. And I think people are coming in with a lot more stress, a lot of stress that maybe they could have handled in another time, but because there's so much other stuff going on, it's harder to maintain what they were previously maintaining before. So that's what I'm seeing quite often these days.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for me, I see clients that come in um, that are weighed down. They're tired of carrying the weight of everything. These are normally people that are in high up positions, put together. They show up looking like you and I.
Mm-hmm.
And something happens in life, whether it be a separation, whether it be a change of a job, whether it be a loss of a parent, they now can't hold it all together like they used to, and they don't understand why.
Mm. Yeah, and that's a struggle when you are that person that you're used to fixing things and, leading in like big capacities. It's hard to figure out, well, why can't I navigate this for myself? And along those lines, I'm curious, we're not getting into people's business, we're getting into their business. What are some of the surprising things people are talking about in therapy?
Mm. So the most surprising thing is when people are able to connect something from childhood that they did not realize actually bothered them,
Mm.
right? And it's like the surprising thing is they're coming in for this, right? Many of them are coming in because they lost this parent and it's a really difficult time now. And they're trying to figure out how to navigate and move as fast as they used to at work and wanting to do the things in their personal life. But what they're finding is, oh, this is much deeper than that. Because we're trying to get to the root of why is it so painful? We know losing a parent is painful, but what's the significance to you and what is this reminding you of from the past? And
Mm.
that is what therapy, is to do. It's a lot of people come in because they have this problem, but more people should come in just because they want to learn more about themselves.
I love that. Yeah. And that self really gets challenged depending on the situation and the circumstance, right? And we don't always realize it, but it's like these slight like shifts in identity, the slight like shift in belonging. And it's often triggered by things like breakups, right? I'm sure you see that in relationships, Alicia,
Mhm.
like in the workplace too, when you're elevated and like promoted to different things, right? I see a lot of women who, especially Black women who when they get into like these power positions, especially when they're the only one, right? They start to question who they are
Yeah.
and am I enough and all those things that we hear and we hear it, but it is real. Like we struggle with those ideas and we tend to internalize it so much, but we do have to go back sometimes and look at the roots at it, like you're saying. And then we also need to have some tools to navigate that so that we can recognize it really isn't us. It's something it's kicking up inside of us, or maybe we just have to learn to deal with what's going on around us so we can understand it like we really are okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a big part too is how do we start to ask for help? Because that's a big one that we hear, especially in minority communities, Black and Brown communities. We didn't always grow up with the models for how to say that something is wrong or to even just believe what we're saying. Sometimes we've been dismissed, right? So, or we come from that place of like what happens in the house stays in the house. But, truth is silence doesn't really do anything for us, right? It kind of buries things. So, can we talk about that a little bit, starting that conversation? How can people start the conversation about what's hard for them and what's going on?
Oh, I think that's a tough one. I think there's so much that goes into that topic in and of itself, like you kind of said before. I definitely think that in terms of the conversation, you kind of have to go back to boundaries too, because
Mm,
to me, it goes hand in hand. If you don't have boundaries, you can't really have a difficult conversation with someone because it's sort of a way to protect yourself, right? And I think one of the things I think people struggle with or get confused about boundaries is that, they say, oh, I declared this thing, I made this boundary. So this is how people should understand and know what I'm saying and follow through and never violate them and blah, blah, blah. That's just not what it is. Your job is to create your boundaries for you, but then you are responsible for enforcing them. So if you don't like the way that somebody is speaking to you in a situation, it is your responsibility as the creator of that boundary to remove yourself or figure out a way to kind of handle that. And I don't think that's natural to our cultures and families of color and things like that because I know in my family we were taught, hey, keep your mouth shut and just say and do as you're told, and it's none of your business or whatever. Or even the fact that you should kind of have some boundaries and not just say yes to everything.
mm,
As an example of a type of boundary. That really wasn't taught, right? So I think, again, going back to having boundaries, knowing what they are, but you have to enforce them. Nobody's going to do that work for you. Nobody's going to, set the boundary of where you need it to be.
ooh, you have to do that. Okay. Okay,
And
Miss.
I have something to add to that.
Yes, get it. Uh-huh.
Specifically speaking about women of color, right? We're taught in our household from very young, like that didn't hurt. You feel like
Yep.
it did hurt, right? So just learning to be vulnerable, like and accepting vulnerability as power and not weakness, because we can't get the things that we desire from other people, like to meet our emotional needs and to care and have compassion and concern, if we're not vulnerable.
1,000%.
And whereas our parents taught us that to protect us from the outside world, we should have always been able to be vulnerable in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Mm,
So just getting in the mindset that this is not a sign of weakness. This is going to give me my power back. And so I'm going to go and have this conversation with this therapist and know that she is a trained professional. She is not here to judge me. She is not here to um, question me or, she's just here to listen and allow me to be seen and heard.
Mm-hmm.
mm, yeah. And it's maybe that experience that you've never had unconditionally. And even some of us have to learn what that's like to have someone just like listen to us and show up for us in that way because it's just not that easy even to be seen. As much as we tell people like, yeah, we want to be seen and all of that, right? If you haven't had that experience, sometimes even that can be uncomfortable. And I'm curious about when people come in what are they most surprised about? And I'm also curious, like, what are they most on guard about too when they come in that therapy space?
Mm, so I can speak to it.
Hmm.
The thing they're most surprised about, so in my setting, I have them tell their story in autobiography form when they come in. So it's different than a lot of other people. And they're so much surprised about the things they learn and remember about their story. And it gives them power. It sees where they see where their resilience is. Now, what they don't necessarily like is sometimes some of the relationships that they've had or how they were mistreated or how they adjusted, right? Like, so getting to like, where does this perfectionism come from?
Hmm.
Not always pleasant to see it.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think that, like feeding off of what you said, Sharon, I see a lot of that pop up, on my end when people are maybe out of these like toxic relationships and they're finally in a really good relationship. And all of these little
Yeah.
moments from their story, from their history, are popping up and triggering them, and they have no idea why, because they should be, in a situation where, hey, they love this person, they're treating them so well, but it is also simultaneously the most difficult relationship they have had, because most of the time when they're coming to me, they really haven't done any of that work to look back into their story and see what kind of brought them to this point that makes receiving love or giving, having a healthy relationship uncomfortable.
Mm. Wow. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's hard if we don't even know the ways that we're showing up, our patterns of being isn't necessarily, I'll use the word like normal, right? Because we've normalized sometimes like the chaos of our lives or the heaviness of our lives, and that we're just supposed to push and do the things. And, we don't get to see, or I'll say in that therapy healing space where someone is really like witnessing you and your story, and in a very like safe and caring way, you get to see and understand like, oh, that really wasn't okay. Right. And I love when people had those aha moments, or they realize like, oh, like I've been the one holding this together and I really shouldn't have been. And that's why X, Y, and Z. Right. And when you have that, you are empowered to make different changes in your life. Like I tell people, like you're a big girl now. Like when you were younger and a kid in a family, like you didn't really have much choice in saying you were in that environment. But now you have all these tools to make different decisions, even if the people in your life aren't really ready to, right? And even with that, if the people around you aren't ready to change, or they're not growing at the same pace of you, what would you guys recommend? How do people handle that when they know better, they're feeling better, they're doing better, but maybe they're still in the same unhealthy relationship? Maybe they're still in families that aren't willing to change and really see them. Maybe they're going back into like even work environments that don't feel safe. How can they navigate that? How do we move through that?
So, we kind of talk about things that give them power.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm taking one step towards that each day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you navigate through it, like knowing what you can change and what you can't, and focusing on what you can change versus what you can't.
Mm-hmm.
And that basically gives them the power back, and they feel empowered to just make things better day by day. And I always encourage them to do that, and then for them to be the example. And many times we can be the example and we can lead other people to change, right? But when we focus so much on what they're not doing and we try to control it by what we want them to do, we want to make them do this now, it's not the same outcome as us being the example.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would add to that too. And really just exactly what Sharon said, focusing on yourself. You can't change other people. The environment that you're in, potentially, you can't change for whatever circumstance, or maybe you are able to a certain degree. But all of that leads us back to the point that you actually need to focus your energy and your focus on you and what your needs are. And maybe that is doing, one little act of, something for yourself that gives you power. And then you build from there. But it has to be a focus back to you and not other people, in my opinion.
Yeah, starting from where you are, making the small shifts. every day. And I think sometimes it's okay to find communities that work for you, right? It's like, yes, we love like our family. Yes, we love like our work and where we are. But if it's not really serving you and it's taking more from you, even if you can't get away from it for the moment, like find a place that will pour into you, or find a place that does feel more supportive and aligned, right? And that doesn't just have to be therapy. Like you should be involved in other communities too that you feel good about, that you can just be yourself, right? Like I'm in like run groups and that feels good, right? I just found like the over 40 double dutch group, right? And they're so welcoming. It's like, all right, I can go jump, get out my system and, and keep it moving. So find those places and spaces, yeah, and that's okay too. So
You're so right. I think it's like, so you raised a really good point. It's like when you hear someone say you have to change your expectations, that can sound harsh.
mm,
But when you find it in other places, it helps you to change your expectations of over here because I'm receiving this here. I realize they can't really offer it yet. And I'm not going to hold them to that because I'll just keep getting disappointed.
Right.
that part.
Right.
And we set ourselves up for that too, right? But even that is a pattern of breaking. Like, why do I keep expecting the same thing from people that are not willing to give me what I'm even willing to put in or what I need?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, ladies, what is your best tip for someone listening on where to start with getting help? And we are directing this to communities of color because it is Minority Mental Health Month. And because for us, like we have a tendency to hold more, carry more, push more. I'm going to even say pray more. And I'm a Jesus girl. So I love praying, but I think even God sends us help. And we've got to be able to recognize all of that too. And maybe more is not what we need, but maybe we need less in lots of different areas. But I'm gonna let the experts tell you. So what's your best tip for someone listening on where to start with getting help, with shifting, whatever it is, healing, and why should they do that now?
I'll go first. So for me, thinking about, myself and other people that I've worked with, it is sometimes about getting a little quiet and like I said before, kind of focusing on yourself a little bit. And I know it can be hard if you have not been a person that has ever focused on yourself, or you're somebody that is focused on helping other people all the time, or just that person that's just always there for everybody else, but not yourself. I think shifting back into an exercise that I like to do, which is just sort of listing out partly what your goals are for yourself in life and just everything that you feel like you are not doing particularly well or that you'd like to improve. And then that's kind of your guide. For me, I think once you have that list down, you can start tackling things one by one. Some things, there aren't other people that can help you with, like finances, maybe that's something you've got to work on your own. But these other things, a lot of these things are connected to emotional patterns, behavioral patterns, things that you've had your whole life. So I would say start with the thing that feels the easiest off the list to talk to somebody about. So maybe it's like, okay, I need to talk to somebody about like, this thing with, my brother and sister, right? And that's an easy thing to talk about. And then maybe you just use it as your guide to get deeper and deeper, but it is worth it. And it is a way for you to focus your attention back to you. Because I think a lot of people tend to give it away to other people.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm gonna come from like a personal and a inner aligned place. When I was at a low point, I did not want to reach out to a therapist. I'm a therapist. I had shame. And so if you're dealing with that, there's other ways to get help where it's kind of like a little safer, right? Therapy is great, but it's not necessarily for everybody in that moment. um, that we might think, yeah, you should get a therapist. So I started off with books. I started off with reading self-help books. I started off by going to workshops that I felt were safe, where it was like self-care, self-love. And I also was looking at podcasts
Yep.
because I've been the person that's the helper, right? And so in my time of need, there were people there to help me, but I also had shame. And so therefore, I was not prepared to make myself as vulnerable as I needed to. So, but I will tell you that just establishing a new routine, whether that be reading a book for 10 minutes, listening to a podcast, even looking at social medias where people have small, short clips, can help build your hope and your encouragement and your strength to be able to become vulnerable. and take that next step to therapy.
I love that. Thank you so much, ladies. I think you've offered like a wealth of what we can do and how we can approach healing and approach healing differently. And we won't be able to get into all of this today, but we will definitely share everyone's information. But I hope you collectively hear some things, right? Where there's like, oh my God, like there's some patterns and things in my life that I need to undo. And wow, like there are different faces of me out there and I can get what I need. You know, I heard from you guys to attach to what you need. So whether you're starting at therapy or you're starting with like, girl, go get a book, right? You're starting with like, listen to more things. You have the power to do that now. I'm hearing, you know, you can connect with what you identify with, whether that is another person of color, whether that is in different industries or areas. Use all of that to unlearn and rebuild. And at the end of the day, like get the healing that you need because you deserve that the most. Ladies, thank you so much for holding space with us. For those of you listening, thank you so much. Make sure y'all share this with somebody because somebody needs it, right? Even if your starting point is not therapy, even though we invite you in, there's lots of other things. Even with these ladies, there's so many other ways that you can work with them too. And we hope that you do connect and find their information. But thank you guys and be well, be healed, be hopeful.
Yeah.